So let's get started. So the main thing we discussed last time is the capabilities of HTML, what you can do with it. What was the main things you can do with HTML? Okay, describe page content and structure. And here, what do we use to do so? How do we describe the structure and the content? Using what? Using semantic tags. We use tags. So before we do this, let's just remind ourselves that basically a website is made up of one or many pages, page 1, page 2, page n. So that's what a website is. And a page is made up of elements, E1, E2, En, many elements. Now, these, how do we define elements? Elements are defined by tags. And these tags are standardized, already defined by the by W3C, by the standard body that is managing HTML. And when we describe the content, these tags, we can use them to describe the structure and the content of our page. But we have so many tags in the HTML. How do we choose the appropriate one? That's the major challenge in the HTML when you're writing HTML. How do you choose which tag to use? You choose the most meaningful one that help you describe the role of that part of content on your page. Remember, tag, you take a tag and you put some content inside it. And you wrap that content inside the tag. So that wrapper describes the role of that piece of content. Whether it's a navigation, are you defining a navigation on the page? Are you providing some header? Are you defining the main part of the page? Within the main part, is it an article? Within an article, is it a header? Is it a paragraph? And then on the page, is this a footer? And so on. So based on the role and the meaning of that piece of content, you choose the appropriate tag to wrap that content, to describe it semantically. So your page will becomes more meaningful. When you look at it, no, this is the header, this is a navigation, this is a footer, this is a main, this is an article, this is a section, this is a head 1, H1, this is H2, this is a paragraph. So that's how you choose. And if you run out of option and you are confused which one to use, use it there. So basically, kind of a container inside it, some elements that you are not able to kind of clearly define or clearly specify the role of that piece of content on the page. And you try your best to choose the one of more specific. The more specific, the best.
What is an example of something you can use div?
Okay, good question. Div is sometimes we will see later on that sometimes some part of the page you want to select it and you want to make the background color, let's say, light yellow or green. And those contain multiple sections and multiple paragraphs and multiple articles. So it's just a bunch of things that you want to, all of them, give them the same style. So you may wrap them into the div so you can easily access them together as one package through CSS or through HTML, through JavaScript. Okay, so the first thing we describe the page structure and content. What else we can do with HTML? Tables, display tabular data using the table tag that we've seen. So we have a table tag specific for tabular data. And you basically open a table tag, you close it. And within the table tag, what do we have? Rows. How do we define rows? Using TR, which stands for table row. And within a table row, you have cells. How do you define cells? TD, which table data. That's basically the idea. If you want to be more sophisticated, you can say, okay, I have T head and T body and T foot. If you want to break down the page into multiple sections, again, based on their role. Usually the first row is a kind of header that has the column names. And usually the footer has some kind of statistics or some kind of summary that you summarize the rows that you have in the body. If you want to keep it simple, just table TR, and within the TR you have TVs. What else we can do with HTML? Yes, thank you. Display media content. How do we display media content? Yes, using image, IMG, video, and audio. Okay. So all of them, the main important attribute of these tags, what is the most important attribute, is the source, SRC. And in here you put from where this media is coming. It's an address. Either it is a local file, such as, for example, you go and say source image/cat.jpg, or it could be, this is called the relative URL, relative to the location of the current HTML file. It's a relative path. Or you can be an absolute full path. If you are grabbing an image or a video or audio from the web, you can go ahead and put the full address, paste it in the source. What else we can do with HTML? Collect input, collect input from users using what? Forms. So these are the main capabilities. This is what you can do. So the first one using semantic tags. Second is table tag. These are the image, video, audio tag. And this one is the form tag. And within the form, what do we have? The form, again, is made up of one or many inputs. I1, I2, IN. Input elements that we will see. Okay, so let us just quickly see the media, how it looks like. Let's drive it through a small example. Every concept in the slide, there is an associated example in the examples. So let's look at the media. Here is the media, where it is. Here it is. Here is the media image. So for the image, let me put here dash Windows, Windows button left, and then Windows button right. Okay, just putting them side by side so you can see. Let me open this in the browser using this live server plugin. And you see here for the images, if I want to display an image, very simple. All I do, I use the IMG tag, image tag, and I specify the source of this image, the address of this image, and I assign it to the SRC attribute. So you see, this is a tag name, and this is called an attribute. Attribute customizes the behavior of the tag. So in this case, I specify what image I want to see in this image tag in the actual source. So as I said, it could be an absolute URL, or it could be relative to the current location. I might have here, let's say, images/mycat.jpg. So in here, the browser will look at images subfolder. It will look at the current location of the HTML file. It will look at an images subfolder, and there's mycat.jpg. It will grab it and display it in the browser. Or as I said, this is called a relative path, or it could be an absolute path that's similar to what we have here. This is a path that I can copy, paste in the browser, and you can see this is an absolute path. I grab it and I paste it in my source. Now for the audio and video, if I have a video, all I do I grab the video, the URL of it, and I assign it to the SRC. And in most cases, I specify these attributes called controls. And these controls attributes gives me this ability to do play, pause, increase the volume, switch off the volume. So if I remove these controls and save, you can see I don't have the ability to play, pause, and control the volume. So that simple attribute controls gives me that ability to control the actual video and audio. Without the control, yeah, I think so. Like I can, let's see if I have here autoplay. This is where it's a bit confusing sometimes. Is it true? No need, just like this. Let's say, okay, good. It's autoplays as soon as it loads. Sorry. Controls. Yes, if I still want to stop it or so you basically these attributes allows you to control the behavior of this video. Okay, same thing for audio, exactly the same, except instead of using video, I'm using here audio. Yeah, it's clear so far. Now this is a little bit more advanced. Don't worry about it. I just wanted to give you a small taste of how I can control this using HTML, using JavaScript. So in here I have an audio. I have an audio tag. I give it an ID. And in here, I'm using small little JavaScript to grab this audio and run and play it or pause it or change the volume. Don't worry too much. I just want to show you that you can control it programmatically using some small little bit of JavaScript. Later we will see it. It's not important at this stage. Okay. So far is it good? All clear? All right, so let's move on now and start our forms. The forms are most important part of HTML, especially for us as web developers. That's what we will spend most of our time doing. Like for the actual content, some kind of designer will do that. But us as developer, we spend a lot of time with forms. So let's study forms from scratch. So let us go ahead and run this, open this in, open this file. Let me close all. And let me open this one. So this is an empty page. And let us create some form. Let's say to create an account, for example, create an account. So let's go ahead and create a form to allow the user to create a new account. So the form starts with the form tag. So the form tag is the one that allows us to create forms. And inside the form tag, there's this action, don't worry about it. I will explain it later. Let me just remove it for now. And inside the form, what I will have? One or many inputs. So what I do, let me just start with an input like this. Input. Just like this, input, save. And this will give me a text box for me to type something. The form has one or many inputs. So let's start with 3 inputs. One for the first name, one for the last name, and one for, let's say, date of birth. All right, so let me save. So input, this will give me 3 boxes. And here, if I want, by default, the type of data that I can put here is text. By default. I can change this to say, oh, the last one, I don't want it to be text. I want it to be a date. So once I save, this will become a date picker. See here, this became a date picker. So by default, what is the default type for inputs? text. So even if you don't write it, it will be text. So the default is text. So the first concept, forms are created using form tag. And a form, inside it, I will have one or many inputs. And these inputs have type. The default type is text, but you can choose other text. So you may have, for example, let's say, sorry. Okay, very good. Yeah, you can have numbers. Yes, very good. New inputs. So I put here type is number. Yeah. And if I put number, you can see I get a little bit, oh, sorry, here. I get a different behave. I can have these arrows up and down to increment and decrement. Now, you can choose, you can play with other types. So for example, you have color type. By the way, you don't need to memorize them. You just do control. Yes, password, the behavior of password. Yeah, as you type, they are changed by a star or a dot. So whoever is watching over your shoulder, they don't see what you type in. So you can play with these. For example, I have here time. Let's play with some couple of them. Input. Type is color. And let's just save. You can see here time. I can choose the time. I can choose the color. Yep. So that's basically the types. Many types, you can play with them later on. Now in here, this is not very helpful for the user. They don't know what I'm expecting from them to type. So usually with inputs, it's a good idea to associate them with some label. So here you say here's a label. And this label is for this input. So I want to associate this label with this input. So what I will do here, first of all, this is, let's say, first name. First name. And here, yes, I give this input an ID. I will call it first name. Give it an ID. I call it first name. And then I'll say here, this label, I want you to associate it with first name. Now, because we don't know CSS yet, let me just put some break, new line. So we have every input in a different line. When we learn CSS, we don't do BR. BR for new line. Later on, we will have much more sophisticated way of laying out the form using CSS. For now, we just, after every input, we put a new line. Or even double new line, just to make it maybe a little bit better. See how it looks. All right, so let me save. You see here, this is first name, and there is an associated label. So the inputs have an associated label. The good thing is, take a look at this. When I click on the label, can you see here when I click on the label? The associated input gets the focus. So not only I'm describing what I'm expecting from the user, but if they click on the label, the associated input gets the focus. So that's the first idea. So to be nice, I create another label here. This one is for, so I give it an ID, and this is the last name. Oops. The last name, here is last name. And this one is basically last. I associate this label with the last name. Okay, let me create another label. This one is basically date of birth. I give this one an ID of date of birth. And here, this label will be associated with date of birth. No need. So here, okay, here. And I give this one an ID of, don't worry about the name, ID of hair color, okay. That's it. Save. Let me put some new line in here after this, guys, and ready to save. Here's my form. Yes. When I click on the label, the input associated with the label gets selected. That's another benefit of using labels. Now it's meaningful. When the users see the form, they know what they expect. Now, sometimes something is not very clear. For example, let's say, let me give you, you can add something called placeholder. Placeholders, sometimes you can give an example or further instruction. For example, save. You can see this is a placeholder. Of course, don't do it to insult the user's intelligence. But if it's clear, don't give this placeholder. It's clear. First name, they know what first name is. But maybe something that is not clear, maybe. Yeah, some specific format or some, let's say something like student username or username. This is sometimes a bit confusing for the for the student, even for students. So here I put here username, or let's say QU username. Here placeholder, don't repeat yourself and put here QU username. It doesn't add any value. Don't duplicate and be careful with the users. You know, some people get annoyed. Don't explain the obvious. Things that are clear, خلاص, it's clear enough. But for username, it's a bit confusing sometimes. Is it student name, or usually it's not the student ID, by the way. You know this. So it may be something like, let's say, Sarah Ali, 1845, something like this. You give an example. Then I'll save. And you get an example here, or further instructions, or something that you want some further tips to help the user answers. So you have this nice placeholder, and as soon as the user clicks in there, that placeholder kind of disappears, and whatever they type will be there. So placeholder is not a replacement of a label. Label is still important. Associate them with input, and if you need more hints, more maybe input examples, further instructions, you can put them as placeholders associated with that input. Okay. Okay, what else do we want here? Yeah, okay, let me show you a couple of things. Let's put another example here. So those are the basic attributes. Let's put here age, although just to show you. So here I'll make it a number, and here I'll make it age. Type is number, and the ID. Ah, yes, thank you. Thank you, very good. Save this. Okay. Now here's the age. So you get this. You have the ability to use this up and down to change the value, but you can see the age is going negative. So if you want, you can use further attributes, more attributes, to control or to customize the behavior of the input. More attributes. One of them is this min value. Min, like the minimum is 1, or maybe even, let's say this is a form for QU as a new student, minimum 14, genius. Maximum, I don't think we'll get anyone above 100. Maximum is 100, something like that. So, and the default value. So you see most of students, when they come, maybe they will be 17 or 18. So I'll put 18 as the value by default. So I put value equal 18, save, come back here. You can see here it's 18, and I can go up and down. If I go all the way down, let's say 2, I can't You see 14 and that's it, even if I click, because this is the minimum value. Maximum, I go 99. Up, up, up. There's no up, 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 because 100 is the maximum. Yep. I don't think it validates. Let me see. Yeah, it doesn't validate. If you want to do validation, you have to write some JavaScript to do some further validation. But this is just to help with the, it controls the behavior of what? Controls the behavior of this up and down, up and down. You can also choose a step. Like I want to go up by 3, not by 1. By default, it goes up and down by 1. So you see here, I didn't save. Save. So here it goes by 3. It goes up by 3. Maybe you have a decade, for example. You start with 1990, 2000. 1990, 2000, or 1950, 1960, 1970, and so on. So you can go by steps. So you cannot learn, of course, this part of the 80%. Remember the 20-80 rule that we discussed. There are so many other attributes that you discover. I don't know all of them, of course, nobody knows all of them, but you know the most important ones. So the most important ones that we have seen so far are what? The type. Yes, many types to choose from. The common types are text, numbers, dates, time, color, very rarely used. And so a week, you can pick up a week. For example, here, instead of the date, you can say week. And by the way, whenever you are in the IDE, you can do control space and it gives you possible values. So here, I want to pick a week. Save, and I'll go back and you can see here I can pick which week I want. Okay, so the type is important. The ID, what's the ID is used for? To us in this scenario, to associate an input with its associated label. Another usage for the ID, let me put here. Okay, I can come here and I can programmatically, later on we will see this. I just want to give you a taste. Where is the, okay, come on. Here, console, all right. So what I can do, I can say here document dot query selector, and I can grab a particular element from the page by its ID. So I put the pound sign and I put the name. What was the name of the first name? The ID of the first name? First name. First name. And I can come there and say, give me the value of the first name. It gives me the value. I can change it. Take a look at the first name. It will change. It changed. So the ID is very important if I want to associate an input to a label, and if I want to access that element from JavaScript or from CSS. I can access it using the ID. Okay. Now, what is missing now in this form? What's missing? A button to submit. So usually when we fill up a form, we find the button where we will push it to the server. So what the submit will do? Okay. Where it will say database. We don't have any database. File, we don't have any files. By the way, in the browser, you cannot write, for security reasons, you cannot write anything to your local disk. Yeah, you know this, yes? You can download, of course, but you cannot change a file or create a new file in your system from the phone. Sorry? For the backend, thank you very much. Remember the big picture we saw since day one, this picture here? So we have the front end and the back end. We are now in the front end. Let me see. Here it is. Yes, we will see. So what I mean here, the form, we created the form on the client side, on the browser. Now, when the users fill up the form and submit the data that they have entered, we will take it and we will push it to the server side. And the server side will read it from the incoming request and do something with it. For example, if you are creating a new account, it will take the information that you submitted and it will push it to the server, save it to a file or database on the server side. Yeah. Okay, so let's see how this is done. Let's see. So what is missing, we said? A submit button. So let's create a submit button. Many ways of doing it. One way is to do input, and the type is submit. It can be button, but button, it will not submit by default. It will, button, you may click it and sorry, execute some JavaScript on the client side. So in here, I wanted to make it a submit button. Let me just close this. Let's see what will happen. All right, so let's, anyway, whatever. Okay, here it is. Whatever, submit. You see, nothing really happened in here. There's a problem here. The browser is not able to submit my form. See here, it put some question mark after my form, but it does not submit the data that I have entered. Why is that? File not found. No, this is not related. This is some extension, not related to our page. Not related to our page. There is some problem in our form preventing it from being submitted successfully to be processed. Of course, we don't have a server to process the data, but at least we want to submit this data to the location. First of all, how do we specify which lucky location or which lucky web URL or address that we receive the data that we have entered? How do we specify the destination? Another attribute on the form called action. The HTML people call it action. Maybe they have some debate, destination, URL, link, submit to, and finally they decided action. What do we put in the action? The destination that we receive the data that the user entered. If you don't specify action or you left it empty, what will be the destination? The current page. This is the same page we received the data. Okay. Now, what is missing for us to be able to submit? What do you think? A super important attribute, which is called name. First name. See, is the same name. Usually we give it the same value as the ID, but this attribute is called name, not ID. Let me show you. So what's the name of this input? This is user name. What's the name of this input? Last name, yes? Multiple attributes, same value?
So
In some cases.
Name, comma, ID. There's something like that?
I didn't get questions.
So like instead of ID equals last name, name equals last name, is there a way to join them together? It's like name, for example, comma, ID equals last name.
No, basically the syntax is like this. Every attribute is unique attribute equals some value. Attributes value. So one value. So basically you are assigning one, you basically kind of addressing one attribute that's assigned uniquely by itself, not combined with other attributes. Okay, so here name, what is the name of this one? Date of birth. Just to keep it simple, let's remove this stuff, okay? Just keep it date of birth up to the date of birth. And let's make this one date, okay? Now let's save. Let me just remove this one as well. Keep it simple, just the first name, the last name, and the date of birth. Yes, save. Let's go back to our page. Here's our page, and here's the date of birth, and then I'll submit. Where this data will be submitted? To the same location. So the browser will attempt to send it to the same location. Take a look. Submit. What happened to the browser? The browser basically redirected to the same page. And what it did on top of the URL, at the end of the URL, it appended what we had entered. This is called the query string. This is this terminology that you need to know as a web developer. You know, every domain, they have their own terms, their own words that they use. If you go to accountant, they will say credits, debits, balance. Same thing for us. We have our own terms. So this data that is added to the end of the URL, we call it query string. And how does it look like? Question mark, followed by name equal value, then ampersand, name equal value, ampersand, name equal value. So when I have a form and I submit the form, what the browser will do? It basically goes to the form. The form has elements. Elements have what? Names. So when you submit the form, what it will do? Take the name of the input equal what? The value the user have entered. And then it goes to the second, to the next input. Take the name of the input equal the value the user have entered, and so on. And how does it separate them? By ampersand. And then it sticks this string, sticks it to the URL after what? A question mark. What I described is a standard way of doing things, part of the HTTP standard. When I say standard, some people like us got together many years ago, and they had a discussion. How do we send the form data to the server? So different ideas and different fights and lots of discussions. And then some voting took place, and this is the way we will do it from now on. And that's it. That's how we are following the same one. So the form data is sent to the server using name equal value. Very simple. If you want to change the world, HTTP and the web change the world through simple mechanisms, super simple mechanisms. Not something too sophisticated or too scary. Name equal value separated by ampersand. Take that string and stick it to the address using a question mark. Yes, it's clear. Now, but many times we don't see this on the web, especially if we have a long form. When we submit it, it does not stick it to the end of the address, of the destination address. That's one way of doing it. What's another way of doing it? So, by the way, here, what we're doing here, there is another attribute called method, which is get. So I'm sending this data using a get. Two ways to basically push the data to the destination or to the server, either using a get or using push. Okay, push. Now, you know, these people, HTTP people, again, had some discussion, or the inventor of HTTP said, okay, what do we call this verb to send the data to the server? Do we call it push, post, send, transmit? And they had some discussion, and then which lucky verb they choose? Post. So two verbs, get and post. Yeah. Now, if you do post, of course, for post, you have to have a server. For post, you have to have a server. So let me just, because we don't have a server yet, let me just use this one here, just very quickly. So I'll say here, when you are done with the form, I want you to collect this input and post it to this address. Now, I'll go ahead, save this. and go back here and fill up the form and submit. Just to show you, let's just let me do it again. Just here it is. Submit. You see now this data, it has been sent to this URL, but was it appended to the URL? The data was not appended to the URL. It was basically sent in the body of the request. So when a request went through the web, two ways to send data. Either to send it, add it to the destination address after a question mark. Which method you are using in that case? A GET method. Or push the data to the server side using a POST method. And in that case, what the browser will do, it will not add the data to the URL, it will add it to the body of the request. So the request has a body where we can put our data in there. Okay, now just to show you the difference. So if here I can say, oh, I don't want you to send it using POST, I want you to send it using GET. And I want you to send it to this URL GET. Let me save. And if I use the method GET and I'll fill up the form again, here's my form. Let me fill it. Let me just to make sure. Here it is, submit. And you can see now, because I'm using a GET verb to send the data was appended to the destination address after a question mark. It was sent as a query string to the destination. So two ways. Remember, here it is. Super important, of course. We will explain this as we move forward. So on the web development, we have two. We have the client side and we have the server side. Yes? How these two parts communicate? Yes, using GET and POST. And these GET and POST are part of, basically it's part of a protocol of communication, a way of communication called, what is the name of this communication protocol or communication mechanism that allows this communication to take place? Now, request is the response is that client send request, server send the response. Client send request, server send the response. But how this communication takes place? There is a protocol of communication, which is now when we visit some page, what do we put? HTTP. What do we put HTTP for? HTTP aljazeera.net, HTTP q.edu.qn. So I'm saying, server, Jazeera server, wake up, I want to talk to you. Which protocol are you using to talk to you? HTTP protocol. So as web developers, of course, this is the first time kind of you have the discussion. You need to learn this protocol, HTTP protocol. For now, very simple protocol, which is a client server. Basically, the client sends a request and the server sends a response. How many types of requests we have seen so far? Two. GET, especially when you are getting something from the server, or POST, when you are sending something to the server. Now, even in GET, for example, when you want to get your transcript, what do you think the server will need? If you go to Banner and you want to get your transcript, the student's ID. So you are basically, although you are getting your transcript, you are sending small piece of information to the server for the server to be able to do its job. What are you sending? The student's ID. For example, if you want to know the price of the latest iPhone 14 on Apple website, so you go and say, let's say apple.com/products, product name, Apple 14, for example. So you are sending some input to the server using a GET request. But if you are creating an account, most likely you will fill up a form, and what you're doing, sending this form data to the server. Which verb are you most likely to be using? A POST verb. And in this case, when you fill up the form, what the browser will do? When you fill up your account creation form, what the browser will do? We click the name of the input equal the value, name equal value. And what it will do with this name equal value? It will append them and construct a string separated by ampersand. Now, what it will do with that string? In which case, if you are sending using a get method, the string will be appended to the URL. If you are sending this data to the server using a post request, what the browser will do? It will put it in the body of the record. Are you following? Yes. So you see here, there is a client server. The client sends a request, the server sends a response, and this communication is facilitated using which protocol? The HTTP protocol. Two major verbs this HTTP protocol has. What are these two major verbs? Get and post. Get and post. These two verbs really change the way. Get and post. That's what you are doing every day on the web. You are either which one is more common? Get or post? Get, of course. 99, maybe 95% is get. And the small part is post. Okay. And when you are getting, if you want to specify some parameters or some inputs that the server will consider when giving you some information, how do you send it? No. For example, you want to get your transcript. Okay. So what you will do banner / transcript / student ID, and you give your student ID. So then it will give you the transcript for that particular student. Yes. If you have a form and you fill out the form, it's like creating a new account, as I said. Most likely, in most cases, look at from now on, whenever you submit a form, take a close look at the URL, whether they are using post or get. Most cases, they are using post.
The URL for security reasons.
So get, there is a much deeper kind of discussion when to use get, when to use post. But one of them, when you are using get, anything you are sending to the server is basically visible in the URL. Yeah, which can be some kind of security risk, because sometimes there are some extra data you are sending to the server. If you use post, the user will not see them. But if you are using get, the user can see them. But in both cases, if you are more advanced developer, aware of the web development, I'll show you, you can see all the communication taking place between the client and the server. Okay, I think we are done. All right, thank you very much. I hope it's clear. Some of you will go to the lab, practice some of this. Inshallah, next time I will explain. So next session, towards the end, we have a quick quiz, 10 minutes quiz. Please bring your laptop, don't forget. It will be multiple choice. Make sure you study the HTML as an example. Okay, thank you. Yes, please. I will post it. Yes. HTML is only like conceptual.